if I don't allow myself to drift, hourly or daily or weekly, I can get a lot more done in those 4 hours than I can in the 8 hours. And so it frees up so much time of my life um, to do other things that I'm passionate about, that bring me closer to God, that allow me to influence others.
It turns out that one of the things that Christian men struggle with the most is drift. In fact, this is an epidemic. A lot of us deal with not motivation, not the ability to have grit, grind, willpower in our life, but distraction or drift. And today on the Known Disciple Project podcast, Justin and I are going to be talking about drift, when to deal with it, how to deal with it, when to recognize it, and how we actually bring ourselves back from drift. Justin, I'm excited to jump into this on today's episode, man. How are you feeling?
I'm excited as well. This is a really a really awesome topic, because I think all of us fall into drifting in so many different aspects of our lives daily. If not hourly, we start drifting a little bit. So let's
Yeah,
get it
man.
going, man. Yeah, this is gonna be awesome.
That's so true. Hourly. I was just thinking about this. In fact, we were just chatting about this before we hit the record button. I was killing it this week personally, getting up, running my morning routines. And this morning, I grabbed a cup of coffee. I walked into my garage gym. I sat down to read my Bible on my phone. And 30 minutes later, I realized I was on Facebook.
Yeah,
And it was like, what the heck's going on here? I just accidentally drifted away from my quiet time into social media.
it's so
Man,
easy to do. Yeah, it is so easy to fall into that, and just that's why they call it a time suck. Like, social media, or just drifting in general. Because you look back and it's like, man, I just wasted 30 minutes doing something meaningless, with no intention behind it at all. But
yeah. Yeah, let's chat about it. So, drift is the topic for today. And we're going to be talking directly to those men who are not just kind of passively living their life as a Christian, but they have that desire, that burning, that yearning in their heart. They know that there's something for them in life and they just need to reach for it. And those guys, first off, I got to say, I've been that guy. I'm still that guy at times where I have this desire in my heart. I know that Jesus has called me to do a little more, to put in a little more effort into something. And I just drift away from it. I get distracted, burned out, tired. It's hard to keep that going for long periods of time. And so I think we need to have this conversation today so that other people will see that they're not alone, that this is not only common for men, but that it's almost probably necessary for our development. And what would you add to that, man? Why is this such an important topic?
have you ever read The 4 Hour Work Week?
Honestly, I have it behind me on my bookshelf right there. And no, I've never read it.
Okay. Well, I read it a long time ago, but what I love about that book is just the title of it. It kind of
Mhm.
grabbed me whenever I read it. And so I kind of relate the 4 Hour Work Week to a lot of things in my life. If I don't allow myself to drift, hourly or daily or weekly, I can get a lot more done in those 4 hours than I can in the 8 hours. And so it frees up so much time of my life to do other things that I'm passionate about, that bring me closer to God, that allow me to influence others. And so just finding that opportunity, because there are plenty of opportunities um, that we're missing out on because we do start drifting throughout the day. Just finding and recognizing those moments in time and eliminating them, it frees up so much more time of your day and your week, and essentially your life.
Sounds like what you're saying is that if we can eliminate drift, we actually have more time back to ourselves.
Yeah, to do things that we really enjoy and are passionate about.
I think we need to define drift for those people who are maybe not familiar with the topic, or maybe they're just going, I don't know if I drift or not. Like, how would you define it?
I mean, I think the simple definition, just using your Facebook analogy this morning, I mean, you caught yourself drifting and then realized that you had 30 minutes of your day gone for,
Mhm.
you know, just by scrolling on social media. And so we do that in so many different aspects of our lives. I don't like to be in the gym very long, but I catch myself like looking at my phone in the gym for longer than I want to, and then I kick myself for being in the gym longer than I want to. And so we just find little things that just distract us. And once we start drifting into that distraction, it just takes time that that we should be valuing. How about you? What do you think? Definition of it.
Yeah, I take a lot of inspiration for this topic from the book Outwitting the Devil. And I would recommend that anybody listening to this check out that book if you want to get a really interesting biblical perspective on drift. And definitely check that book out. But my thoughts on drift is that it's similar to distraction. Distraction being, something happens that you would not have predicted or expected, and then all of a sudden you're having to deal with it. Somebody walks into your office while you're working, you got to stop what you're doing and talk to them. Or maybe you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off and you get distracted. Now you're no longer listening to that podcast. Like it's something that you couldn't have predicted, but now you're responding to. I kind of think of drift as more like taking your hands off the steering wheel.
Okay.
It's more passive, where you kind of let go of control, and then all of a sudden there's no boundaries, there's no parameters, and you're aimless at this point.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of reminds me of like a boat, right? Like a boat while it's sitting in the water with the engine off. It doesn't realize, or you don't realize if you're sitting in a boat that you're drifting, right? It simply just stops anchoring itself to something. And so if
Mhm.
you're not anchoring yourself to something, then a boat is going to continually drift, without turning the power back on and getting back into position. And so I don't know what drifting for some reason I relate it to water. And so if I
Yeah.
use a bunch of water analogies today, that's the reason. But most men, I don't think they wake up one morning and decide to walk away from God. I mean, a boat doesn't decide to just start drifting down out to sea. It just, if it's not anchored in something, then it's going to drift.
I think that the water analogy is perfect because the water is life, right? It's everything around us that is happening, and we have absolutely no control over that. It just is. It's just happening, and we're the boat. We're either in control of the direction we're going, or we have decided to just take our hands off, turn the engine off, and see where life takes us. Great analogy, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, it makes sense in my head. So,
Okay, so let's see if we can come up with a few other analogies just to drive this home for people. Real life scenarios where we see drift. I know one in my life is I drift away from people connection sometimes. And so I'm like, it's not a thing I would choose on purpose. I'm more of a solitude guy, but I know that if I am going to do interesting or adventurous things in business or in life, even in my faith, I have to be around other people, people who are like minded, people who will spur me on, encourage me, even that I can confess to if I'm messing up or not doing well. And so for me, the natural drift that I have, if I'm not purposefully making choices, is I'll find myself alone, completely alone and isolated and vulnerable to attack. And I'll just drift away from relationships. By the way, that's why I appreciate people so much who reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, man, we haven't talked in a while." I'm like, "I know, I'm terrible at that. Thank you for reaching out."
yeah, I, I'm the same way. And I think that there are times, and I think you and I are wired a lot alike in this, where we need that isolation and that solitude.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, if I'm not intentional about reaching out to people, I could find myself in the same situation where I'm completely isolated all the time. And so, yeah, that's good, Mark. Really good.
All right, I got another one for you.
Okay.
You brought up a gym experience earlier, looking at your phone in the gym. For me, sometimes drift happens when I stop paying attention to the results I'm getting in the gym. And I'm not like a super huge dude, but I love working out. I like lifting heavy weights. And if I go too long without paying attention to the results I'm getting, I think I'm getting stronger. I think I'm doing good stuff in the gym, but really what ends up happening is I wear myself out. I have too much fatigue building up. I'm not recovering anymore, and my strength
Right.
actually starts going down. And so for me, one of the tells that I've stopped paying attention to what I should be focused on, which is recovery and actually getting positive results, drifting in the gym with those goals, is that my strength goes down and I can't recover and I'm tired and I can't figure out
Right.
why. And all of a sudden it's like, dude, you've been drifting away from your actual goals. You're
Right.
just putting in the reps for no reason.
And I think that that applies spiritually as well. Like, I mean, do you write down everything that you do in the gym, or do you track your progress?
There are periods where I track it. Currently I'm not, but there are periods when I do.
Okay. I'm huge on just tracking everything that I do, and it's crazy to me that I'll do that in the gym, but spiritually I'll start that out, and then I'll drift away from doing that as well, and then I have nothing to look at and say, this is where I was at when I started this, whatever it was spiritually, and then I stopped tracking, and this is where I'm at now. And also, it keeps me motivated, or I see that I've been demotivated if I stop tracking everything that I do. If I start drifting away from the discipline of just, you know, holding myself accountable and tracking what I'm doing in the gym or spiritually.
Yeah. Dude, you gave me another thought. I'm gonna give one more from my
All right.
life at least, because 'cause I'm a
Yeah, go for it.
drifter, man. I'm a straight up drifter like a lot of men. I have to really purposefully focus on this for myself. So, I love reading scripture. I absolutely love it, and one of the things I love to do the most is to bring current and modern thinking in neurology and, cognitive behavioral therapy and the coaching world, all the stuff that I do for work and find scripture that is God basically saying, "Hey, I was the one who designed all that." For example, in Romans, it talks about that verse well. It's often quoted, the daily renewal of your mind, right? Well, there's a lot of
Right.
neurology research that backs up repetition of thought. And so I love connecting things like that. But as I'm reading scripture, sometimes I read it so much that I just get to a point where I'm putting in the reps and I'm getting no output.
Right.
And so if I have found that if I have no goal when I'm reading scripture, then I don't take as much away from it and I'm just kind of drifting through the scripture, drifting through reading. Yep, box check, not taking
Yeah.
anything from it. And so without a goal, and maybe this is one of the big points of this whole conversation, without a goal in mind, it's easy to drift. You have no destination. Back to the water analogy. If you just get in the water and turn your engine on and start going somewhere, that's kind of the same as drifting almost. You have no destination. So yeah, in scripture, man, like if I'm just putting in the reps, reading and reading and reading and not take purposefully taking something out of it, that's an easy recipe for spiritual drift, I think.
I think a trap that I fell into, just talking about just reading and reading and reading. The reading that, like, everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people in January say, I'm going to read through the Bible in a year. Right. And like, I love that idea. I love that concept. And I've tried it so many different times. And so this year I was like, I'm going to read through the Bible, at this entire, I'm going to stick to it. I'm not going to quit on January 2nd. I'm going to do it. And probably, I don't know, the first or second week of January, I was sitting there reading through it and I was like, man, I'm getting nothing out of this at all. I'm just reading it to read. And I catch myself doing exactly what you're saying, right? I'm reading through Genesis and I'm thinking about the work that I have to do today, or thinking about my family, or, whether Texas Tech is going to have a good, whatever it is, right? And I was like, man, I'm just wasting my time so that I can say in December, man, I read through the entire Bible. I didn't get anything out of it, but I made it through. I checked the box. So that's the ultimate drift for me, is trying to accomplish that.
Super common danger, man. What I heard you say is that achievement orientation causes you to push past all of the actual transformation and just get to the goal, get to the finish line.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever sat down to read and study scripture and get stuck on just one verse?
Yeah, I have. Not in my early days because I I don't know if I even knew how to do that, but now I find myself stuck on a word or a verse very, very often.
I love that. Like it I love when I read scripture and I have whatever the plan is or the goal is that day to read through. And if I just get stuck on the first line of whatever I'm reading, at the end of that, I feel so fulfilled because I feel like that is when I'm closest with God. It's like God wanted me to stop right here today. I read 3 words and and that's it. And I don't have to, if someone asks me, what are you reading right now? What are you studying? Or what did you study today? It's like, man, all I got through today was Hebrews 2:1. That's it. And there's some kind of satisfaction with that rather than saying, man, I got through the entire book of Proverbs or whatever.
Dude, let's take that a little deeper so that people listening can understand that a little bit. Because this is kind of the answer to drift in the spiritual world, right? Is rather than going wide and running past all the transformation opportunities, you slow down and you go deep. And so when you get stuck on just one verse, what's the outcome of that other than just slower pace? Like what actually happens?
There's two things that'll happen for me and one of them is a pitfall and one of them is unbelievable. I either get lost down a rabbit trail of
Mhm.
the verbiage and the Greek and the Hebrew, and um, it's not it's not as much for fulfillment from the verse as it is just knowledge and education about the words and whatnot, and which is cool sometimes. But if I'm trying to grow spiritually, um, if I can get stuck on a verse and just figure out how it applies to my life right then, what I'm going through, um, and how it can change me that day, man, there's so much fulfillment in that. And I love it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with going down a rabbit trail on certain words and the meaning of certain scripture. There's a lot of fulfillment in that as well. But man, there's just something. If I get stuck on a verse or a word in a verse, it almost feels like that's the closest conversation I can have with God in that moment. Like God is saying, Justin, this is where I want you to focus right here, right now. And this is how I'm going to talk to you through this sentence or this word. Um, and I love that feeling because then I know that I'm not distracted. I know that I'm not drifting. I know that that's what the intention is and what the purpose is to be stuck in that moment on that word or that verse right then and right there. And so I love that aspect of it.
So good, man. I know for me, sometimes I'll come across a verse or a word, and same thing I do with the deep dives into you know language and all that kind of stuff, historicity and all that stuff. That's fun. I think that's really fun. Um, but at the end of the day, that's just knowledge. And so
Yeah.
one thing I started doing a couple years ago, and honestly, it was because I was doing a terrible job remembering to pray. And I was thinking to myself, how can I do a better job remembering to pray? Like I'm reading scripture all the time, but I'm not connecting with God in prayer. And if I'm going to live a life as a disciple, making it look more and more like Jesus lived his life, then I need to be connecting with God in prayer. So that was the pain point I was trying to solve. How can I do this? And I started thinking, I'm going to sound like a complete nerd here, but I started thinking, how can I habit stack scripture and prayer? How can I make the two one?
Right.
Make two important things one thing. And so I tried it out and I started praying through the scripture or praying the scripture quite literally itself. And man, talk about taking on a whole new life. And if you've never tried that, an easy place to start would be open up the book of Psalms and just read through some of those as if you're praying them to God and allow yourself to sort of just be open to the slowness and the stillness of doing that. That gives scripture some life right there, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that word slowness and stillness. Um, how how bad do we need some of that in our life? Like just slow it down, be still. We talk about drift. If you're on calm waters, the opportunity to drift or is a lot less than if the waters are rough and chaotic. And so, if you can slow down and be still, then that boat's not going to drift as far as it would if there's chaos all around you.
Man, that's such a great point. Keep going. How would you how would you describe slowness, stillness to somebody who's living a chaotic life?
I mean, it's just using the boat example or analogy. I mean, just picture it. You know, how many times, if there's anybody that goes out on the water, I mean, we live down here by the coast. You get out on the water and there's chaos and wind and distraction. You're going to look up and you're half a mile away from where you launched. But those days that you're out on the water and the water is glass and it's just calm and beautiful and you're just sitting still, you're not moving, you're anchored, not by tying yourself down to something, but you're just there. You're just anchored in the calmness. And so that's the way I see it in my head. You're just on a boat. The water's glass. There's no chaos. You're calm and you're still, and it's just a beautiful moment.
You're reminding me of this guy I saw giving a talk just a few days ago, actually, which is probably why it's top of mind. But he was talking about what happens when fight or flight is no longer an option. Like you don't have the option to fight or flight. All of us sort of have this default wiring when we're faced with chaos or danger or threat to run away and hide or to fight it, right? And that's kind of how our nervous systems are wired. But what if you don't have those options? And he gave the example of a child in an abusive home, in an abusive home. They can't run away, they can't get away.
Right.
The abuse is going to happen, and they can't necessarily just hide. They will be found. And so what ends up happening is they learn to disassociate. They learn to completely internally disconnect themselves from the world.
Mm.
And if you've had a particularly chaotic childhood or a particularly chaotic adulthood even, I think sometimes men can learn to just completely disassociate themselves from connecting with the world around them. That is not necessarily a healthy thing all by
Right.
itself, because we tend to call that, oh yeah, I'm just compartmentalizing things, right? Just compartmentalizing, just stuffing it over here. I'll deal with that later.
Okay.
And I think that those things cause us to drift because we're constantly in our mind sort of walking away from those things rather than dealing with the stuff in our life. Back to your boat. I am thinking of a boat. So
Yeah.
back to the boat, it's like the environment matters. The environment is sort of what gives us options to either have solitude or not have solitude, to have order or to have chaos. And I think for a lot of men, they don't take responsibility for the environment around them, and then they end up living in chaos because of the choices they have not made.
Man, that's good.
And then they wonder why they have no time to read their Bible, or they're disassociating from their family, or they're disassociating from their goals and work, or whatever it is, and they're drifting. They've taken their hands off the steering wheel. They're just
Hmm.
out there in the chaos, drifting rather than fighting for what they need in their life.
Yeah, but what's dangerous about that is there's going to be a desire to feel some kind of void in that aspect, and I think like men recognize that and they start feeling that void up with things that they shouldn't be filling that void up, right? I mean, they're in the middle of this chaos, but at the same time, they're longing for something, and it's a lot easier to reach for something that will distract you in a moment or potentially fulfill you for just a few minutes
Mhm.
than taking responsibility for the situation you're in and finding solace and comfort in things in the word or things that are healthy in life. So man, that was really good, Mark. I think you nailed that in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna have to chew on that one tonight. And I love that word responsibility too. I was actually in a conversation with someone today about that word, about men, for some reason, not just men, but maybe it's just our society. We've forgotten that we have to take responsibility for our actions.
Bam.
And yeah, and a lot of times we put ourselves in a situation that we don't like and it's uncomfortable, and it's our own fault, and we won't take responsibility for our actions. Um, and then we're too lazy or unmotivated or distracted or complacent to pull ourselves out of that situation that we put ourselves in.
Yeah. Yeah. Or worse, we've atrophied so much that we're no
100%.
longer capable of it. And there's no strong men around us to pull us up.
100%.
Dude, like that, I've seen that happen to people around me where they have they have allowed their life to take control of them so much that they no longer even have the muscle to step up themselves, and they have to have somebody come beside them and say, "You are meant to be more.
Yeah.
Like there's more in you if you would just take a baby step in the right direction." And that, I think that starts with responsibility. Like take responsibility for something, something
Yeah.
small,
Yeah.
anything, and that will lead to more.
Yeah. And it becomes easier to do. Like we all can find something that we're lacking in to take responsibility for, whether it's our diet, nutrition, our spiritual life, our marriage, the way we raise our kids, our church attendance, our prayer life. I mean, I could ramble on and on and on. There's something throughout the day that you could say, I'm in this situation because of the decision that I made. Let me take responsibility for that decision and fix it right now. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It could be something that, I mean, something small, like super small. But it is a discipline to take responsibility for your actions. And unfortunately, I feel like we live in a society now where it's easier to cast blame on somebody else and to blame all your problems on Mark Hummel, right?
Mhm.
Me blaming my problems on you, not Mark
It's
blaming his
some of
problem,
it's
right?
probably true.
So, yeah, there's no doubt. But it is easier to, you know, project your problems on somebody else than taking responsibility for yourself.
Have you ever run across a guy, and I like what you said earlier, this is not just exclusive to men, but it's one of the things we're here to talk about is that man who's drifting. But this happens to women too, for sure. Have you ever run into somebody who just is struggling with meaning? Like
I think,
everything's just flat.
yeah,
There's no meaning.
I think the majority of men struggle with that. Meaning and purpose, right? Like, and you could, for me, you could interchange those words and correct me if I'm going down the wrong path there. But meaning and purpose, to me, could be interchangeable. And I
Mhm.
meet so many men that their routine is their routine. They wake up, they go to work, they come home, and then they feel unfulfilled throughout the day. Whether it's because they feel like they're in the wrong job or whatever. Like they're searching for that purpose, and really the only thing that's gonna fill you is the word in the Lord. Um, but yeah, there are so many men that are just searching for meaning. I come across it all the time.
How do you find meaning in your life if you feel like there is none?
Whew. I can tell you what not to do really easily. Um, and I think we find that we find and seek out attention and attraction and distraction from things that will never fulfill you. Right? There's so much purpose, and all of us are just designed and wired to have so much more meaning, especially for the kingdom, but just in society in general, an impact on society. You know that I've never met anybody in my life that has done something for somebody else and hated it. Right? There's always some kind of joy and fulfillment there, and for some reason we just don't do it. And so it could be something really small. Yesterday, the neighbors 2 houses down, some of their mail came into our mailbox, and I was like, I could either call them and tell them to walk down here, or I could walk down there and hand it to them. And it tempted me just to call them and say, hey man, some of your mail's down here. I'm too lazy to walk down. But it literally crossed my mind, hey, I'm going to walk down there and give them their mail. That way I can have a conversation with them if they're there. But if anything, I'm walking back and saying, man, I just saved them the trip from having to walk 2 houses down. And there was meaning in that for me. So something really, really small like that, it just made me feel good. Like I felt better for doing that. And it was tiny. And so,
I think meaningful things often are. So
like, yeah.
I heard there's a psychologist of all types of people talking about this, and it caught my attention. They're talking about meaning and where meaning comes from. This is a really key thing, I think, because it's maybe even a good way to summarize what we're talking about. If you're struggling with meaning in your life and you're looking for some reason to go on, a purpose, whatever you want to call it, but meaning, the the ingredients for meaning are something like responsibility,
Mhm.
full stop. And so he gave this analogy and he basically said, think about when there's a natural disaster on the other side of the world, 10,000 people die. What do you feel when that happens? It's essentially like, oh, that's a bummer. And maybe
Right.
you sit and think about it for a minute, but you move on and you live your life. But what if 10 people in your neighborhood died in some
Mm.
natural disaster? Well, that's going to have a much bigger impact in your mind. And well, what if somebody in your family dies? And as he got closer and closer to home, his purpose was to point out that the closer they are to you, the more responsibility you feel. And so if there's zero responsibility in your life, there's nothing meaningful happening. But if you begin to take responsibility for something, then meaning will grow and you can grow purpose from that.
Right. That's so good.
Dude, I was like a mic drop. I'm listening to this
Yeah.
guy going, geez, people need to hear that message. More
Yeah.
people need to know that the path to meaning isn't sitting back hoping. Hoping is not a strategy. Sitting
No, it's
back and
not.
hoping is not going to get you there. But if you start to take responsibility, you recognize maybe that you've drifted in your life. You say, I'm just going to take responsibility for something. Maybe it's I'm going to take better care of my body. I'm going to take better care of my mind or whatever. Something. Take a few steps, keep going with just a few things. You'll start to feel meaning in your life. And then life gets fun when you point that meaning a direction where you're healthy, soul, body, strength, everything directed toward one mission because you have meaning somewhere in your life.
And that is so good. Imagine, imagine accomplishing that. And when you get the ball rolling and then bringing other people alongside you to do the same thing. I'll always, not always, but people always want to talk politics because people like to talk politics, and I don't like to talk politics. And so my go-to answer when people want to have a discussion about politics with me is I can only control what's inside the four walls of my home. And it's kind of the same thing, the same concept to me. Like I can't go out and change the world tomorrow, but I know that I can take responsibility for what's going on inside of my house, even if no one is here but me. And so I can take responsibility for that. I can influence everything that's going on inside of the four walls of my home. And then that can influence my neighbors and the city and the world. And so, man, that was awesome. And you're giving me a lot to chew on today.
Likewise, man, I'm going to be dreaming of boats later.
You're rolling.
Dude, let's try to make this really practical because one of the things you and I agree on for sure is we don't want to tie up heavy burdens and put them on people's shoulders and they can't carry them, right?
I agree. We talked about this in previous podcasts, and I think we'll probably talk about this every time we meet. You can't wake up one morning and do just extraordinary things. Like you've got to start small, and you've got to stay sharp, and you've got to stay disciplined in little bitty things. Do the small things right, and the big things become, easier to do. So,
Yeah.
but keep going, keep rolling.
I mean, that's somewhere in scripture, right? And that's my go-to, by the way, when I can't remember what the scripture is. It's in there
Somewhere,
somewhere.
yeah, it's in the
But
book.
if you're faithful with small things, bigger things will come, right?
Yeah,
And I think that verse, somebody look it up and drop it in the comments when this episode drops. So help me out there. But I think that is God talking about how he's designed our minds. It is a spiritual truth, but it is also a physical truth. When you are faithful with the small, repetitious things in your life, then you get to do more things. You get to higher capacity for your work, higher capacity for what you can carry in your mind and your thought. And it all comes down to repetitive, small successes each day. So again, I'm going to keep pushing, Justin. Let's make this as practical as we can. So if a guy's doing nothing right now, how can he step into his spiritual development in a very practical?
I mean, start small. And we talked about this either in the first or second podcast. And um, you know what the only verse that when people say, when people have a conversation about memorizing scripture, like I cannot memorize scripture. I can't. And so John 11:35 is always my go-to for memorizing scripture because it's the shortest scripture in the Bible. It's the one scripture that I know that I've memorized my entire life, and it's Jesus wept. Like, you can't get much smaller than that. And so whether it's memorizing scripture or, whatever, just start small. Do one thing and just keep it on repeat and keep sharpening your axe. I was going to share this for you. Have you ever heard the story of the old man and the young man who were they're not called tree trimmers. What are they called? Guys that cut down trees. Um,
Oh gosh, what
lumberjacks.
is?
Lumberjacks.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a story that I heard. There was an old lumberjack and a young lumberjack, and the old lumberjack, and they were working on the site together, and the young guy is just full of arrogance and big strong kid and whatever, and he challenged the old man to a tree cutting down competition. And the old man said, "Yeah, but I'd love to do this. Let's go." And so the young man just goes out and he starts just chopping away all day long. He's just swinging his axe and swinging his axe. And every time he would look over at the old man would just be sitting on a stump. And the young man thought, he must be resting. I'm going to dominate this competition. And so by the end of the day, at the end of the competition, they walk over and look at their stack of wood, and the old man's stack of wood was twice as high as the young man's. And the young man was just baffled. So he walked over to the old man and he says, "How in the world did you accomplish this?" And he said, "Well, while you were chopping away at that tree, I was sitting down sharpening my axe."
Hmm.
And it didn't take him very long to sharpen his axe, but it was pivotal for him to sharpen his axe. And so take the 5 minutes to sharpen your axe because that's your spiritual disciplines, right? Your prayer, your Sabbath, your fasting, whatever. It doesn't take very long. You just sharpen the axe and get back to work. And so that's where I would tell men to start. Is just take 5 minutes to sharpen your axe every day,
Yeah,
and then just continually sharpen your axe.
dude, that's something you can sink your teeth into right now. And I would say, let me apply some coaching fairy dust on this, if you will. And so that 5 minutes needs to be planned. It needs to be something that you're protecting, that you're putting it into your schedule. For a lot of us, it's your morning routine. You get up, maybe you read some scripture, say some prayers. But if it's not in the morning, put it somewhere else. Just protect that time. And one thing I learned too, challenging myself to give a practical tip here. One thing I learned is if you're new to reading scripture, or even if you've been doing it for a long time, a practical way to really digest it is to take notes while you're reading. And so, like, get your pen out, get your notebook, journal, whatever. And as you're reading, it's not a volume game. It doesn't matter how much you read, right? Like we were saying before, it can just be a verse, it can be a word. But whatever you read, write down some thoughts around what you read. And one of my favorite things to teach people to do is not only write down what you're taking away from it, but write down 2 to 3 questions you have because of what you read. Man, that's an accelerator for getting your mind to think about things, to stop and park on them for a while. What's a question I have rather than here's what I read? So you could do that in 5 minutes. Read
Yeah.
a few verses, read a chapter, write down a couple of thoughts, write down a couple of questions, chew on it the rest of the day.
Yeah, I would tell every man that's listening to this or watching this, don't focus on becoming a different man overnight.
Hmm.
Don't focus on becoming a different man overnight. Just focus on meeting with God, just consistently, and then just let God change you over time. Um, I think we, and you know, I've talked about this. We get this idea in our head, and we're just hard chargers, and then we
Mhm.
just wear ourselves out, and just don't let that happen. Um, you know, focus on God, be consistent, let God change you over time. It's a marathon; it's not a sprint. You know,
Thank goodness
and that,
for that, man. I'd lose a
yeah.
sprint.
Oh, me too. I get made. A couple of years ago at the high school, they had a day with the track team, and they let the parents race.
Mhm.
And I hadn't sprinted in, I don't know, forever. I was a pretty fast guy, you know, growing up. I was like, man, I'm gonna get out there and do this thing. I felt like a baby giraffe when I started running. I'm just awkward. And yeah, there were memes about me and stickers. And a friend of mine, my running form is his profile pic on Strava. so, so, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever sprint again. I'm afraid of it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Oh
That's
my
hilarious.
gosh. Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Man, I've got so many stories where I've turned into a meme. We'll have to lead off with one next time.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
how are we going to wrap this episode up, man? What would you say in summary of this drift conversation, practical spiritual development?
I think every man is being formed. You're being formed into something, right? And so I encourage everybody to choose habits that are going to form you into the man that God created you to be. I use that lumberjack story. I think that everybody that is watching this and everybody in general, the older lumberjack, he knew when it was time to sharpen his blade. Like he felt that,
It's
right?
good. Yeah.
And so we know when we're drifting, we feel it. So instead of just hacking away at it and saying, I'm going to overcome it, if you feel that your blade is being dulled, take the time to sharpen it, right? And so that's what I would say today. Take that away. You know when you're drifting, like you can feel it. So if you start to drift, take the time to anchor down. And once you anchor down, recalibrate and then get back after it.
Dang. That is a fantastic way to wrap this up today. And I just would maybe add one more thing, which is don't do it alone.
How to,
So
the,
so let's leave everybody with that. Don't do it alone. And if you need support, you have two options in my mind. If you need people around you, one is you can go find a group that already exists somewhere around you. And for a lot of men, I hear this constantly, breaks my heart. For a lot of men, they say something like, I've looked, it doesn't exist. My church doesn't have anything with men like that, or, I don't really have any friends. There's not any people around me. Well, I'm going to tell you, man up a bit and create it. Like you
yeah,
can reach out and befriend one person, one like minded person, and start connecting with that person and build a friendship. And the two of
yeah,
you can reach out to one more. And before you know it, you'll have a group of guys that you're hanging out with that you're
yeah,
spurring on. The worst thing we can do is sit back and never start building the group if we need to build the group. Yeah.
I agree. The accountability piece, the friendship piece, there's a quote that I love. Hope I don't butcher it, but I'm going to try it out. It's a coal from a fire doesn't leave it. A coal from a fire doesn't lose its heat immediately. And I love that because if you have a fire, if you have a group of men who are on fire and you separate, you're still going to be warm for a while, and then then you're going to be extinguished. And so find some other men that will hold you accountable, that'll keep you, keep you warm, keep you hot, keep you burning for the Lord. And so I
Love
just
it,
love that
man.
quote.
And
Man, good
also
stuff.
keep coming back to this. Keep coming
Yeah,
and listening to Justin and I talking about spiritual development and
and
biblical
boats.
masculinity, boats, and doing micro dosy adversity stuff.
Got a microdose adversity.
Yeah. All right, man. So,
All
Justin,
right.
thanks. This was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It was
And
fun.
for those of you who are listening, we'd be honored if you would help us spread the word that this podcast exists. It's new, and we're going to spread it through word of mouth. You guys sharing it with your friends, dropping comments, engaging with us. And by all means, let us know if you took something away from this podcast by sharing a comment. And that'll help us grow the channel as well when you do that. Justin, until next
Uh,
time, man.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. See you next time.
See you, brother.
Bye.